Hi class, in this video I will be talking to you about using Git and GitHub with R. So the document that I have open on the screen that you see here is the document that I'll be going through in this video. You have a link to this document and I highly recommend that you follow along. So I'll keep this here for a minute. So the first thing I should tell you is, what is Git and GitHub? So Git is a version control system. It's like Google Docs, but more powerful and accommodates lots of types of files, including our Markdown files. It also integrates really well with RStudio. So once we get everything up, it's up and running and installed, it should feel fairly seamless. So the first thing you're going to do is create a GitHub account. So you're going to go to github.com, which I have open here, and you should put in a username, your email, and password. If you think you're going to keep this for longer than you're at McAllister, perhaps use a different email account than your McAllister email account, and just use an appropriate username. So if you're new, you should go there. If you've used GitHub before, you can sign in from here. So I will do that. And I'm going to move this screen over and come back to it later. Okay, the next thing we need to do is install Git. So first we want to check to see if we already have Git installed. So this will only be the case if you've used it somewhere else. So to do this, you either need to open the shell, or in RStudio, you can actually open the terminal from here. So if you want to do it on your own, I'll sort of let you figure that out. If you want to do it from RStudio, you can either, down in this console area, there may be a tab called Terminal. Otherwise, you can go to Tools, and you can choose Terminal, New Terminal, or you can also choose Shell. All of those things should do the same thing. If none of those things appear, you may have to, so like on a Windows machine, you may have to open this somewhere else. I haven't used a Windows in a while, so I'm not positive. If that's the case, you should be able to go to your Start menu, go to that Search tab and type CMD, and that should open the window you need. Okay, so once you get to that location, you want to run, type which space git, and if it returns something like what mine says, that means you do have Git installed. Okay, then you're finished. You don't need to install Git. If you don't have Git installed, then you need to install it. And I'm going to refer you to the instructions in the manual I have for how to do that. So if you need help with that, please ask. It's different for a Windows and a Mac, so I'd rather not walk through these steps on the video. I do want to point out, let's see here. So once you have Git installed, the next thing you need to do is sort of connect things together. So in order to do this, we're going to use the use this library. If you don't have that already installed, you need to install it first. If you already have it installed, do library use this, and then you need to run this configuration. And again, this is in the manual, so I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. But the function is going to look something like this, and you're going to change your username and your user email. The important part here is that the user email you put in here has to match the email you put in GitHub. So when you sign up for GitHub, whatever email you used has to go here. Your username can be whatever you want, although I'd recommend using like something like your first and last name or something sort of reasonable like that. Okay, then I need to move a window over here. Give me just 1 second. So now we're actually going to create, or you're going to create your first GitHub repo in GitHub. So once you're in GitHub, when it opens up, it'll look something like this. Now, mine has a bunch of repositories in it. Repo is short for repository, and repository just means a place for things to be stored, okay? You can think of them as files, and actually you'll see once we put these on our computers, they will show up as folders on our computer. Okay, so here, once you log into GitHub with your new account, you should see an icon here that says new. And depending what, I see one here. If I go to like my repository page, I think the new shows up over here. Either spot, go ahead and click on that. And once you choose that, you're going to put a repository name in here. In my example, I have it called my_test_repo. I'm just going to call this test repo. I'm going to keep it public, which we will do in most cases. And then you want to make sure to click this add README file. And we can click, I see I need to update some of my documentation. So click the add README file and create repository. So once you've done this, you have created your first repository. Now, there's not really anything interesting in here yet. We have this one file in here. And what we want to do is we want to connect what's on the cloud on GitHub to our computer. And we want those two things to be able to talk back and forth to each other. So we are going to do something called cloning. We are going to clone this repo, and I want you to think of this as copying the repository to your computer. And when it does that copying, there's this connection between what's on your computer and what's online. So you're going to click this green button that says code, and you're going to choose, you're going to click this button over here. There used to be, it used to actually annotate this better. This is the copy button. You're going to copy that repo. And all you're doing is copying that URL. Then we're going to jump back into our studio. We are going to click on File, New Project, and then you'll click on Version Control. You'll click on Git, and you're going to paste that URL that you just copied into that repository URL. So that's the repository link that you just cloned from your GitHub page. And then it is going to put that, it's actually going to create a folder inside of wherever this location is. So I don't want it in this folder right now. For now, I'm just going to put it on my desktop because for me, I'm likely going to delete this again very soon. So once you have that set up, with where you want it to go, the repository that you copied from GitHub, and then you can give it a project directory name. I truthfully always just leave it as the same name that was on GitHub because I don't want to manage two different things. So once I click create project, oh, okay, let me try that again. I already have something called test repo out there. So let me go back, new project, version control, Git. Let's paste that in again. And I can't put it on my desktop because I already have one there named to that. So let's try my documents. Sure, that seems good. Okay, there we go. So once I do this, it's going to do a little bit of work. And I see here that it has this README document. And if I open it, I see that very boring test repo. And the other thing I want to show you is if I go, I'm going to bring this over here. If I go to my documents, I now see a folder out here called test repo. It has that README file in it, and it has created this new file called test repo, which is an R project. It will always do that. Okay. So now what we want to do, let me just make sure I'm doing the right thing here. So now what I want to show you is really how we work with these files on GitHub and how GitHub communicates with your computer. So now that I have, actually let me open this tab as well. So once you have that linked to GitHub, you will now have a tab on here called Git. It has put 2 new items in here, and what this tells you is that these new items, which RStudio created, are on your desktop repository, but they are not out on your GitHub repo online. So let's actually, I mean, these two aren't really necessary files to put out there. So let's actually make a new file. This is something you would probably do on our markdown file. And I'll just keep it as is for now. So now what I want to do is I want to save this file in my test repo. And let's just call this test file. Okay, and I'm saving it in that test repo folder. Save it. And as soon as I do that, that file shows up over here. Again, this tells me that this is saved on my computer, but it has not yet sort of been saved out to GitHub online. All right, so how do we get that there? How do we get it online? Let's go through the steps to do that. So I'm just going to put all 3 of those there. So I'm going to check the boxes next to each of these. That's called staging them. And then I'm going to press this commit button. And that brings up this screen here. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger. And inside here, if you sort of scroll through the details of this, this is telling me all the places where I have differences. So here I have a whole lot of differences because these are all brand new. Okay. Now I'm going to do 2 things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a commit message. So maybe I'll call this initial commit, right? It's helpful if you provide messages that will sort of make sure you remember what you did in this session. So I'm going to call this initial commit, and I'm going to commit all 3 of these files. Okay. Now, when I commit these, let me pull you back to GitHub. And oh, that's not the window I wanted. Let's see here. There we go. So here's my GitHub page, again, that test repo, and I'm going to refresh it. Now, notice nothing else is here. I still just have that README file. So committing does not update it on GitHub, okay? So let's go back to my file. So I committed those files. When I look at the history, I can actually see that I've made some changes, okay? Here I've updated some things. So if I want it to actually get updated on GitHub, so sorry, let me take a step back. So when I commit, all that does is I like to think of this as meaning it commits the changes to memory. So now I know that I made this change at this time. So I can actually go back and sort of see where I made various changes. If I want to make those changes viewable on GitHub, I need to push those changes out to GitHub. So I can do that in one of 2 ways. I can click on this push button here, and it's going to do that work. This is telling me that it has pushed it out to GitHub, so I'll close that. And then if I return to GitHub now and refresh, I will see that all my files are out here, okay? So going back to my repo, or to RStudio, I'm gonna close what I just did. The other way I can push things is inside of this Git tab. This green up arrow means push. And here I pushed it. It's okay to do that, but it's telling me that everything's already up to date, so it hasn't actually made any changes. Okay, so as I work in my document, you know, let's say I deleted some code and then I, you know, wanted to add an R code chunk, and in my R code chunk, you know, I might, let's say, load a library, right? So notice nothing shows up over here yet. As soon as I save this file, that test file RMD shows up over here, okay? So, you know, I guess I don't have any hard and fast rules for how often to commit and how often to push. I save my files a lot. And once you make some sort of meaningful change, which could be, you know, as little as adding an R code chunk, then I commit my files, I guess, as soon as I've done something so that I can write a commit message. So perhaps my message is something like, you know, load libraries, commit. At this point, I may not want to push my file out to GitHub because it hasn't really been a big change. So I might sit and do some little things and commit those changes. But eventually, when I'm ready, I want to push those changes out to GitHub. So I use that green up arrow, push those out there. And then if I look out here and refresh, I should see that our markdown file, I see that is now just has library tidyverse. So that's the process of using GitHub. This is something you would do sort of with your own files. Next week, I will talk about how to use GitHub to collaborate with others. So that is all for now. Thank you.